ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਇਸ ਖਾਸ ਪੇਸ਼ਕਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਹਾਂ ਜਸਲੀਨ ਕੌਰ। ਪੈਰਿਸ ਐਗਰੀਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਿਰਧਾਰਿਤ ਕੀਤੇ ਗਏ ਵਾਤਾਵਰਣ ਟੀਚਿਆਂ ਉੱਤੇ ਤਰੱਕੀ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਨੇ 30 ਕਲਾਈਮੇਟ ਲੀਡਰਸ ਦੀ ਮੇਜ਼ਬਾਨੀ ਕੀਤੀ। ਇਸ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਸਵੀਡਨ ਦੇ ਸਟਾਕਹੋਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖੀ ਗਈ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲਈ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਲਾਈਨ ਤੇ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹਨ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਆਫ ਐਨਵਾਇਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਐਂਡ ਕਲਾਈਮੇਟ ਚੇਂਜ ਸਟੀਵਨ ਗਿਲਬੋ। Hello Minister, thank you so much for joining PDC Punjabi.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It's a pleasure for us as well, Minister. Minister Guilbeault, you have been hosting meetings over meetings to address climate change. You recently hosted the 6th Ministerial on Climate Action in Stockholm, Sweden. So we would like to know what are the key priorities Canada emphasized on?
The meeting on climate action is an initiative that Canada started 6 years ago with China and the European Union at a time where there wasn't a lot of willingness to work on climate change in the United States. The Trump administration had pulled the United States out of the Paris Agreement. So with China and the European Union, we felt that we needed a forum to try and continue having discussions, dialogue, to try and keep the momentum going on international climate action. Obviously, it's been a bit more challenging over the last few years in our relationship with China, but we are starting to rebuild bridges, and we feel that we might have some disagreements with China on certain issues, but climate change is certainly an area where we feel we can and should be working together as well as with the rest of the world.
Climate change is a big issue across the world, and as you mentioned, the momentum is growing worldwide to address climate change and tackle pollution. So what is Canada doing and has done till now to address climate change?
So in Canada, we've been doing a number of things. I imagine one of the most important things we've done is to put a price on pollution. If you speak to just about any expert who's been working on climate change, they will tell you it's one of the most efficient way of fighting climate change. And one of the interesting things about Canada's model is that we return to families, to Canadian families, 8 out of 10 families where the federal system is being applied, they receive more money from the pricing system than what it's costing them. So it's a very socially progressive. So the richest don't. But it's a very socially progressive system. We have been putting in place different things. So 3 categories. Incentives. We're investing record levels in public transit, $30 billion. Right now, as we speak, there are 300 new transit projects under construction in Canada. There are more than 1,000 that are in the process of being approved. We're investing like never before in Canada in the electrification of our transportation system. We're investing in clean technologies. We're basically converting the Canadian auto sector from a sector that was producing gasoline engine to a sector that is producing electric vehicles, which will be the vehicles of the future. We've also adopted a number of regulations or legislation to fight climate change. For example, we adopted a regulation to force the oil and gas sector to reduce the emissions of methane. Methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. It's 28 times more powerful than CO2. By 2025, methane emissions in the oil and gas sector will have been reduced almost by half. We did that in just a few years. So these are a number of things we're doing, but we're also helping other countries internationally. So we've doubled our international climate finance assistance, as we were asked to do last year before the COP26 summit. And now we're working hard to ensure that other countries step up to the plate, but also the private sector in helping to finance the green transition and also help developing countries adapt to the impacts of climate change.
Minister, we'll come back to Canada's position on tackling climate change, but talking about the international partners, Canada and India established strong cooperation on environmental protection and climate action. So how both the countries will promote the clean technologies?
That's probably one of the highlights of my trip. We have been working on this for quite some time at Environment and Climate Change Canada. I met the Indian minister for the first time in Glasgow at the end of last year at the Climate Change Conference. We spoke again earlier this year over the phone, and we met today to sign this memorandum of understanding. Basically, the idea is to increase cooperation and collaboration between Canada and India. And it's really not a one-way street. I really believe we can learn from each other. Canada has expertise, certainly when it comes to renewable energy. Our electrical system is already one of the cleanest in the world, and it will be almost carbon-free by 2035. And that's certainly an area that is of great interest to India, as electricity consumption and energy needs are going up rapidly. And I think we can help them, but they can also help us. We want to create a new water agency in Canada, a federal agency. The Indian government just did that. So we can learn from their experience and see how they did it, and maybe it will help us do that in Canada as well. So I really see this as a true collaboration between India and Canada.
Talking about the environmental cooperation between both the countries, so this was created in 2005 to deepen the environmental cooperation, including the promotion of clean technologies. What growth we have seen till now, and what results can people expect from this bilateral agreement?
India wants to increase massively the amount of renewable energy that they use, and try to reduce, for example, the amount of coal that is consumed, certainly to produce electricity. So that's clearly one area we want to work with them on. We also want to work on heavy industries and see how we can decarbonize this sector. We're making great progress in Canada. We've invested with a number of companies, including Apple, in a project in Quebec that will produce aluminum that's almost free of CO2. So this is an area where we could collaborate. Certainly, we're doing very similar work in the steel sector, in the cement sector. These are important industries for India as well. So I think we can collaborate on that as well. We both want to tackle plastic pollution, and there is international negotiations are starting to land an international treaty, a legally binding treaty on plastic pollution. This is an area where India and Canada can collaborate together as well.
Minister Guilbeault, we will continue this chat, but right after a short break. Welcome back after the break. We have in conversation with us Canada's Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Stephen Guilbeault, who is in Sweden right now and is addressing meetings on climate change. Minister Guilbeault, COP26 held in Glasgow in 2021 and COP27 will be held in Egypt in late 2022. This meeting in Stockholm occurred at the key halfway point. So do we have an idea where does Canada stand on tackling climate change?
We would say that we're one of the countries that's pushing hard for action, both domestically and internationally. We're not perfect. We have challenges in Canada. We're a large oil and gas producer, which means we have to do even more than many other countries. But I think what I've seen since the end of last year and here in Glasgow and in Stockholm, and last week at the G7 in Berlin, is that many countries recognize that we're trying hard in Canada and that we're trying hard domestically, and we want to work in partnership with other countries to find solutions to this very complicated problem that is climate change. And I think this is a recognition of the fact that we are working hard at this problem, and it's a global problem. So we need to collectively find solutions. Canada can't do it alone. The United States can't do it alone. India or China can't do it alone. We need international cooperation and collaboration on climate change.
Federal government has published its 2030 emission reduction plan. There is a sector-by-sector roadmap to reduce the emissions and create good, sustainable jobs in Canada. This is part of long-term strategies. Do we have any short-term plan which will work faster to save our environment?
I think we are putting in place measures to reduce pollution as we speak. I was talking about carbon pricing. We're clearly seeing, for example, in 2019, oil production in Canada went up, but the climate emissions went down. So our plan is starting to work. Now, our emissions haven't gone down enough, and therefore we need to continue going at it. I was talking about methane emissions that are being reduced as we speak right now. There are more and more electric vehicles that are coming onto our roads, more transit projects. And the 2030, I mean, it sounds long term, but it's not so long term. If we want to be able to achieve our emission reduction in 2030, we need to act now, because companies will need time to implement new measures, to invest in new facilities, new ways of doing business. And that starts now so that we're there in 2030.
Minister Guilbeault, do we have any data about how much climate change has costed Canada and how much it will cost going forward?
Yes, we have the data in terms of climate impacts in Canada, and what we know is that the cost of climate change are impacting Canadians, and they're increasing. Last year will probably be the worst year in the history of Canada in terms of natural catastrophes and the cost of natural catastrophes. There are projections in terms of what might happen into the future. And that's why we are working right now with provinces, territories, municipalities, Indigenous people to create the first ever national adaptation strategy. It's not a federal adaptation strategy, it is a national adaptation strategy. We want to work with all of these parties to ensure that every level of government is part of this. Every stakeholder, companies, NGOs, experts are part of this, because we can't do it alone. Again, fighting climate change is a lot about working with a lot of people. It's about collaboration. That's true internationally. That's true in Canada as well. We know that we've already entered the era of climate change, that impacts are happening and will continue to happen. So we need to be better prepared.
So is this one of the ways to reduce the future cost of climate impacts?
Well, that's exactly what the National Adaptation Strategy aims to do, to ensure that we're better prepared so that when there are impacts of climate change, that we don't suffer the damage as much as if we're not prepared to face these impacts of climate change.
Minister Guilbeault, as I mentioned earlier, you have been hosting meetings over meetings to bring the countries closer to address various climate issues, and Canada also announced the investment of $1 billion to the developing countries for their energy transition. But how are you convincing rich nations to provide the $100 billion a year they promised to developing countries over a decade ago?
In fact, the COP presidency has asked Canada and Germany to work on that specific plan. So that's one of the things I'll be doing in the coming months. I should specify that the commitment was not necessarily for governments alone to provide that $100 billion per year, but for governments to mobilize that $100 billion of money. And so far, governments have stepped up to the plate. There's about $80 billion per year that is being provided by government, but we need to bring in the private sector. They need to be part of the solution. They have way more money than governments do. And frankly, more and more of those companies, investment funds, pension funds are saying, hey, we want to be part of the solution. We want to work with you. So it's about finding the right mechanism and the right way for them to do that.
All right, Minister, before I let you go, any message you have for the viewers?
Well, we need your help. I mean, governments can do a lot, companies can do a lot, but we need Canadians to be part of the solution, to work with us, to work in their community, in their family. Every little thing counts, and the governments and companies will take care of the big things, but we need the little things as well to get there.
All right, Minister Stephen Guilbeault, thank you once again for joining PTC Punjabi, and we wish you good luck. Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
ਸੋ ਇਨਫੋਕਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਐਸੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਖਾਸ ਪੇਸ਼ਕਸ਼। ਜੇਕਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕੋਈ ਸਵਾਲ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਣਾ ਕੋਈ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝਾ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਲਿਖ ਕੇ ਭੇਜੋ feedback@ptcnetwork.com ਤੇ। ਮਿਲਾਂਗੇ ਅਗਲੇ ਹਫਤੇ, ਉਦੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਲਈ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦਿਓ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਤੇ ਦੇਸ਼ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੀਆਂ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਲਈ ਬਣੇ ਰਹੋ PTC ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ।